Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Housing is one of the most important issues facing our city. I think everyone here knows that, and everyone that I talk to 7 days a week knows how bad it is. Many different levels of housing, employee housing, a lot thereof, just regular homelessness, there's a lot in between. But coming today is a way to address that through our community plan. So I welcome you all for coming today. I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. I can tell you a lot of work has gone into it. And I think when you leave today, I'll be leaving with a lot of great information. And most important, we want your opinion. We're holding this event not just to give you information, but to hear you and hear what you have to say. So it's a two-way street. And I hope you'll take advantage and share your opinions and thoughts. Thank you all again. Good night.
We're going to do a little do-si-do here. Thank you, Mayor Diablo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Rogers, and I come to you from Flagstaff. I belong to a group called Southwest Decision Resources, and we're a local facilitation team. I'm here with my colleague, Carrie. She's right here. And Lisa's in the back. You'll see, oh, there she is. She's right here. And we're here to walk you through the agenda this evening. And Jessica Archibald is also here, somewhere out in registration. So welcome to our housing forum. It's complex, as the mayor mentioned. Quick housekeeping: restrooms are over here. You're welcome to use those whenever you need to. We have food in the back, and I would ask this evening. I'm certain there are a variety of opinions in this room about housing, just like there are with every topic on the planet. I ask you to listen to your neighbor. I ask you to be respectful. I ask you to be inquisitive. And let's learn and grow together surrounding this complicated issue of housing in Sedona. So how are we going to do that? Well, we already got the welcome, and you wandered around and learned some things, hopefully, and after the presentation, maybe you'll know a little more, you'll have fresh eyes, and you'll go back to that map you didn't quite understand the first time. And so we're going to next have a presentation that's about an hour. We have 4 or 5 different speakers for that. And you'll meet them as they come up. And then after that, we're going to go back out into the area and go back to those interactive stations. But we also have an opportunity to have some community dialogue. And so how this is going to go, and there's a lot of you here, how this is going to go is we're going to have 2 20-minute rounds. And back there, you saw there were 6 tables. And each of those 6 tables has 10 chairs. If you would like to participate in a community dialogue with the facilitator, when you hear this sound, hold on, it'll be louder. Go join a table. Each table will have a facilitator. You will be guided in some reflections based on the presentation you've just seen, and also have the opportunity to do some map work, which everybody loves. After 20 minutes, you're going to hear this again, and then you're going to leave and new people are going to show up. And so that's kind of the program. We're going to have an hour presentation, then you're going to have an opportunity to either just wander around again, and or engage in a community dialogue. Well, why are we here? We came to you last in a big community forum in September and kicked off the community plan effort at that time. And the community plan is every 10 years, and it guides future growth and development. And as you recall, at that time, we had a lot of discussions not just about housing, but all the other big topics, many of which live within the plan. So what is it? You know, the question is, what do you think Sedona should look like in 10 years? And each and every one of these community dialogues we have is intended to gather that information, which will ultimately go into the plan. There's a lot of opportunities for visions, things like that. And here we are in a community engagement forum. So we really look forward to your comments. We're hoping that the plan will be completed by the end of 2023. We are continuing to collect community input from now through the fall. And then in 2023, there will be an opportunity to discuss recommendations through public hearings. So that's why you're here. The community plan is really important, multifaceted, and guides what Sedona looks like into the future. So tonight, we're going to hear about how to plan a livable community. We're going to just go through some of the challenges and also talk about possible solutions. We're going to do that through 5 speakers. You're going to meet them all in a row. Jeannie Frieder, Cynthia Lovely, Shannon Boone, and Linda Martinez. And the presentation is going to go a little like this. Part 1, we're going to learn about Sedona land use, some of the things that Sedona land use, how it guides housing, importance of affordable housing, what the housing needs are, what's in the works currently with the city, current challenges, and then potential solutions. And some of these are innovative, and some of these are out-of-the-box thinking. And so we'd really like for you to open your minds and be thinking about new ways of dealing with the housing situation. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it to Cynthia Lovely. City of Sedona Principal Planner. She's coming out of the woodworks.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming. And so the title of this forum is basically Housing and Land Use. And so I'm just going to give you a brief background on land use in Sedona. I'm going to try not to get too technical. We're not going to get into zoning, development code, etc. We can do that afterwards, either at the round tables or if you want to ask staff questions. We have about 3 or 4 planners from community development that are here. So I wanted to just start out and say, most people, when they drive around Sedona, this is the landscape that you see. You're probably not thinking in your head, what's public, what's private land, who owns what can be built, and where. So as a planner, we kind of think like in our head is a map. And we recognize that that's not the case for the average person. So when we say land use, some people will ask, well, what do you mean by that? This is a very general view of land use. So in Sedona, we have a pretty distinctive pattern. This is West Sedona, obviously. All of our commercial is along the highway, so that's the center blue portion. Residential, at least in West Sedona, is north and south of the highway. And then we have national forests surrounding the city. So those are general terms. We can get way more specific, if you want to know how many residential zones we have. There's single-family residential, multifamily residential, which you can learn more about when we are at the tables and the stations. Okay, so again, as a planner, this is the map in our head when we're driving around. The green is Forest Service. So Sedona is kind of like an island in the National Forest. And that is very intentional. The city incorporated in 1988. And you can see, if you can see, the dashed line is the city limits. And so in 1988, they intentionally drew the city limits. In that way, they wanted national forest within the city limits. It's pretty unusual. And then in 1992, which was our first community plan after we incorporated, that was pretty much the #1 goal in the land use section, is to retain the national forest within the city limits. And so what that meant was that the Forest Service, they also have something similar to community plan, land use management plan, and they put that into their plan. Amendment 12, in case you were around back then, and it's no longer an amendment, it's in their plan. Okay, again, what kind of land do we have? Public, private. The challenge here today is that only half of the land in Sedona can be built on. So again, within the city limits, all of the gray is either national forest, you've got public land, also in the gray would be parks, public, semi-public, which could be churches or schools, that sort of thing. So this in and of itself restricts growth in Sedona. And then this is a map of, the black is showing all of our vacant properties. And I think what is interesting about it is that it's very spread out, whereas in most communities, they grow outwards. We have a lot of scattered vacant lots. And also the other point to make is that basically 80% of the private property is already built out. So we, again, don't have a lot of room to grow. So these are all the vacant lots. If we were to remove all of those lots that are in the subdivisions, which were the little tiny black specks, we remove things like floodplains or along the creek, you start losing property left to build on. And what this doesn't show, especially with some of these large black ones, is the topography. You may have access issues, meaning there's no road to get to it, or there's steep hills or cliffs. Let's see. So now we come down to multifamily residential. And this map is showing that we do not have a lot of it. And if you're wondering what multifamily is, you could be living in multifamily. It could be a condo, townhouse, duplex, triplex, apartment. So as you can see, we don't have much in town. So the blue is existing, and then the red are the vacant properties zoned for multifamily. So if we were talking about building apartments or something like that, there's not much here to work with. Okay, so that just gives you an overview of what we're dealing with as far as land in the city. And then I'm going to pass this on to Jeannie, who will talk a little bit about the importance of housing.
Hi, everyone. So I am the housing coordinator for the city of Sedona, and really happy to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit. As we plan for the next 10 years of Sedona, a vital part of that planning involves housing. We've heard from Cynthia about some of the details with planning and land use. We're going to hear from Shannon and Linda to dive into the details of the housing, the specifics about Sedona. But first, I'm going to say a few words about why affordable housing is so important to the health of a community, any community, not just Sedona, but why we need diversity in housing types in order to thrive. So it's human nature to think that others' problems are not ours. We imagine that their sufferings are one thing and our life is another. We think we're separated from one another. Because of this, it's sometimes hard to really see, listen, and understand a problem. For many of us, affordable housing may hardly be a concern at all, but judging by the number of folks in this room tonight, clearly it's a concern. In general, though, as an example, I or you as a homeowner may not think much about renters. Perhaps my neighbor who rents and is very comfortable there may not think much about the family who is having trouble making ends meet. But it's happening. It's real, it's immediate, and it's personal to them. Affordable housing issues may not feel immediate or personal to us. The problems of those people with housing challenges may not seem important, but they are. And the truth is, the lives of everyone in a community benefits from affordable housing. Tonight, we are here to explore why these problems are impactful for all of us and why it's imperative that as a community we must support a balance of housing for everyone so our city remains a vital and vibrant community for the people who live and work here and who call Sedona home. So, there's tons of research that demonstrates the benefits of affordable housing, and for each point I'm going to make tonight, there is associated research in the literature to support these points. And yet, there are so many misconceptions about affordable housing. It attracts less desirable residents. It's cheaply built. It will drag down a neighborhood. Affordable housing couldn't possibly be good for business. Well, that's wrong. A wide and comprehensive diversity in affordability and housing types, some of which you will hear about tonight, attracts a wide and diversified range of residents, like young families, healthcare professionals, teachers, firefighters. Affordable housing is quality built, and it matches or surpasses that of market rate housing. Affordable housing can also be a boost to local neighborhood businesses. I know, how many times have you gone to the pharmacy, a restaurant, your favorite store, only to find that it's closed due to a lack of staff? There's a reason for this, and guess what? It's lack of affordable housing. So, a sustainable community, the kind that you and I want to live in, is a place where our lives, our work, our services, our housing is sustainable in the true sense of the word. It's viable, it's livable, and it's supportable over time. And its governance, economy, and all these elements work together to help a community be sustainable and thriving. And housing is essential to this picture, and it can provide a real positive sense of place, local character, where buildings look good and they're safe, they're useful, lots of open spaces for people to spend time, relax, for our children to play. In short, for our community to thrive, our young families to grow, our local workers, teachers, firefighters, and police to be housed, where seniors can age gracefully, and people with disabilities can live comfortably with services, with all the needs of the community being met. Not only are there long-lasting social benefits from having a wide range of housing options available to a community, but there are economic benefits as well. Increased spending power. If I live in housing I can afford, I can spend more money on healthy food, on health care, and other expenses that come with living, raising a family, having a great quality of life. All of this leads to a healthier population. There's increased hiring. More people can live affordably in Sedona, and that will connect the workforce to its community. It increases the stable pool of available workers for local businesses, schools, public safety. More income, taxes, jobs equals improved infrastructure and a better investment in our all-around future. So, a stable, affordable home is really the foundation for everything else. It gives our children the chance to establish healthy habits, focus on their goals and their education. They enjoy better health and educational outcomes, some of which are sampled here, like improved attendance, better test scores, and they benefit from a stronger, more sustainable society. Another upside of secure housing, it contributes to our mental and physical well-being. Research shows we're less depressed. We have more money for our other needs. Our houses are healthier because lead paint and mold, a thing of the past with quality build. Less stress equals better mental health. And how do we improve health outcomes for people with disabilities? Well, start by putting them in housing they can afford. And when our seniors are housed affordably, perhaps in a downsized situation, coupled with coordinated services, health outcomes are improved and aging in place can be a reality. So the bottom line is that everyone in the community equation benefits from the creation and the preservation of affordable housing. It helps keep a community vibrant and prosperous. That's why we are so glad that you're here tonight to participate in this planning discussion about Sedona's housing and land use as we move forward through the next 10 years together. It's up to us. Now, let's take a look at a short video which highlights our faces of affordable housing. These are the people, these are the issues that we are talking about tonight. Thank you.
So often when we talk about people who need housing, your mind might go to sort of the stereotypical homeless person living on the streets. But the reality is that people who need housing are as diverse as those who are housed. So here to help express that today are some of your community members talking about their own affordable housing challenges.
I'm the new executive director of the Sedona Historical Society. I have really loved getting to know the community and working here, and now I would really look forward to the opportunity to call this place home.
I was lucky enough to be able to move back in with my parents after I received a notice that my rent had been increased 52%. I still had a 40-minute commute, so it is ideal for me to live where I work just so I can walk and be closer. If there were more affordable housing opportunities in Sedona, I would love to live in Sedona.
Affordable housing has caused a lot of issues for the Sedona Fire District in our attempts at recruitment and retention. We currently have 2 employees that are on month-to-month leases and are housing insecure at this time. Additionally, we've had folks from out of state or out of town hired and then turned down the job because they could not find housing in this community.
I'm a 25-year resident and business owner in Sedona, Arizona, and I am living in my van in the desert. I would like to see the essential workers in Sedona have housing because they are what make this town exist.
My 22-year-old son has moved back in with my husband and me. He's looking for a job as a line cook, and if Sedona had more affordable housing options, it would allow him to live independently and achieve his goals.
I'm currently serving 37 homeless students and their families in the school district. Families who work here, who get their kids to school every day, and who deserve to live here in a housing that they can afford.
I get to live in an immigrant community here in Sedona, and in talking about affordable housing, they have mentioned so many times how they are looking for programs and sports and things like that for the children after school they simply cannot find or there is not enough funding for. If it was more affordable housing here locally, then there would be more of those programs locally too.
Hi, we have a thriving restaurant here in West Sedona, and if we had enough employees, I absolutely could be open 6 days a week instead of 5 days a week, and be given them the opportunity to support themselves, better learning, and just have, all in all, support the community of Sedona better.
We've seen firsthand how the increase in short-term rentals has impacted the lack of affordability for housing employees, as well as families with young children. We feel that we need an increase in affordable workforce housing in order to increase the quality of life in Sedona.
Last year, we served 57 families that were homeless. These are people that are servers, they're in your restaurants, they're at your grocery stores, they're your teachers. And why are they homeless? Because they can't afford to live here. These are your friends, and these are your family. They deserve a home here.
Moving to the Verde Valley and living here has been difficult because when I moved here, I lived in a hotel for 2 months and couldn't find housing. But thanks to the assistance down payment program, I worked in Sedona and lived in the Verde Valley, and I was able to push my home to be able to start a family with my lovely wife. Thanks to them, I had a great future.
The rising cost of housing is causing seniors to have to make difficult choices between food and medicine. Meals and Wells can provide the food part of the equation, but that is not the ultimate solution. We need safe, affordable housing in Sedona to allow seniors to live here in dignity and safety.
So,
we want to watch it again, do you, Jim? Thanks to those of you that can contribute to that video. I really appreciate it. Now I'd like to introduce Shannon Boone.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Happy to see such a great turnout here this evening. So the folks that you just heard from shared some of their personal challenges with housing in Sedona. And before that, Jeannie demonstrated for you all kind of the connections between affordable housing and a sustainable and thriving community. Tonight, you're here to share your vision for the future of Sedona, and I hope you're deciding that affordable housing needs to be a part of the community plan. But maybe some of you are still unsure Sedona needs affordable housing, or you don't know how much is needed, or you're just kind of a data geek like me and you want to see some numbers. If you'll just bear with me, I'll explain kind of all of the terms associated with affordable housing in the context of Sedona. So last year, next to an affordable housing article that was shared on social media, someone had posted, "The city has no clue what we can afford." And I thought to myself, no, we do know. We know pretty well what folks can afford. And we know that thanks to this definition and census data. So affordable housing is simply housing that costs no more than 30% of a household's income. So the goal is for everyone to have affordable housing. For me, for all of you, for the folks you just saw in the video, and the entire community, everyone's housing should be affordable. If you look at this kind of pie chart and think of it as a chart full of all of the households in Sedona, this shows the household incomes as they apply to the city. So if you start kind of, see if you can see the pointer here, up at 12 o'clock, this red section is about 15% of the population has household incomes below $25,000 a year. And about 25% of the population has household incomes between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. So at $50,000 a year, based on this definition of affordable, a household can afford about $1,250 a month, $1,250 a month for housing. You can see that that's a really large portion of our population. So to understand some of those terms that I just showed that relate to housing and affordable housing, you really have to kind of understand the definition of median income. This is kind of boring stuff, but the median income is simply the income earned by a given household where half the homes earn more and half the homes earn less. So our median income in Sedona, right down here, we're about $58,901. So almost $59,000 a year. So we know that half the people in the city are earning less in total household income than $59,000 a year, and half the people are earning more. And you can see there for comparison as well, some of the other median incomes. So this is where it starts to get a little bit confusing and people start sweating over words like low-income housing and subsidized housing, and we all start to get pictures in our minds and NIMBYism starts to appear. But I'm not sure why. Subsidized housing really gets a bad rap. It's completely unfounded. Subsidized housing is really just referring to housing that's built, acquired, or sustained with government funding. And guess who gets the biggest housing subsidy in the United States? It's homeowners. The mortgage interest tax deduction is the biggest housing subsidy, has been historically for many years. Then as we kind of use that definition of the median income to talk about what is low-income housing, what is workforce housing, how are these things different? If you take a look at the chart here, kind of the first third, if you go around from 12 o'clock down to here, to this point, that's 80% of the median income. So the definition of low-income housing is housing that's affordable to households earning less than 80% of the median income. So we can see that about a third of the community would be eligible for low-income housing. if we had some available. And you can also see, if you just keep going clockwise, the next approximately third of households in Sedona would kind of meet that definition of workforce housing. So when we talk about workforce housing, we're talking about housing that's affordable to households earning up to 150% of the area median income. In a lot of places, that's only 120%, but our market is a stretch here, so we really have to include folks all the way up to 150% of that median income. But this just demonstrates that about 2/3 of the city could be eligible for subsidized housing. Just to give you an idea, at that 150% of area median income, someone earning $88,351 a year, not someone, but a household earning that amount, can afford $2,200 a month for housing. And since interest rates went up, that's about $300,000 house with 20% down. We all know there aren't many $300,000 houses around anywhere. And to kind of demonstrate this a different way, the green on this slide shows you sort of the same as what the pieces of the pie were in the previous slide. So all of the households in Sedona divided up by the monthly payment that they can afford according to their income. And I will add that whenever we talk about household income, it does not include assets. So that 15% of the population that's earning less than $25,000 a year, a lot of them are already in their house is paid off, they're living on assets, perhaps like retired folks. And we know that, we recognize that. So this isn't, perfect science that I'm showing you here. But this does show all of the green sort of that's not matched up with gold. There's a lack of available housing. So people move. People change jobs, get married, divorce, families grow, people pass away, things change. So everyone here, hopefully, is already housed and is pretty secure in their housing. But you never know when that might change, and when it does, this is what you're faced with in the market today. About 40% of the population is represented in those top two lines in the green. But almost all of our available housing is down here costing more than $37.50 a month. 55% of the available homes on the market, not just for sale, but also for rent, exceed $3,750 a month, even though only 15% of our population can afford that amount. And we know a lot of people just spend more than 30% of their income on housing, right? That's not impossible. It's certainly feasible, especially if you really want to live someplace wonderful, want to live close to work. But spending more than 30% is called being housing cost burdened. Cost burdened is simply the opposite of having affordable housing. You probably all know that affordable housing is a problem nationwide right now. But to demonstrate the difference in the degree of the problem, in Sedona you can see that the percent of cost-burdened households is 42.5%. And like I said, housing is a problem nationwide, so in the US, the average is about 30.6%. So you can see by this slide that even folks who are housed are exceeding their means. And this is from the Verde Valley housing study, so it includes the other cities and towns in the Verde Valley. So for the folks who say, why can't they just live in Cottonwood? This is why. Cottonwood has their own problem, as does the whole Verde Valley. And across the Verde Valley, if you average this all out, we're still pretty far exceeding the typical cost burden. So if these are the conditions, you might wonder why all the homes being built cost more than $700,000. Or you just know why. Our market supports primarily vacation homes, short-term rentals. We know that's driving up a lot of the values, and or housing for population growth, so retirees coming here or remote workers. We don't have the jobs that support kind of those higher house prices. And that virtually excludes half our population from affordable housing. So you've all had these experiences. Many young people starting new households have no options, so they either live with their parents or leave the area. Employers find it difficult to fill lower paying positions. Economic development or creating new and better paying jobs is challenging because most employers who look at the Verde Valley say there's no place for the workers to live, so it would be hard for me to start a business or relocate a business here. Families often live in unhealthy or unstable environments, so they're either moving often or have little notice about moving, or the other option is to just be housing burdened, to be paying more for your housing. Generationally, this has massive impacts on educational outcomes, economic outputs, and opportunities for residents to give back and engage in their communities. I think I skipped a slide that was very important here. Overall, the total housing demand in the Verde Valley is over 3,700 units. This was taken from the housing study that was done in 2020. So by 2025, we'll be experiencing this shortage. Sedona's share of that shortage is 1,620 housing units. And again, you can see that the shortage is spread across the Verde Valley. It's not an option anymore to simply go to Camp Verde or go to another town. So I give you all that kind of what sounds like bad news, and you probably wonder what the city is doing about it already. So that's what this next section is about. As some of you know, we didn't have a housing program at all until about a year and a half ago. So this is the start of addressing the current challenge. So far, we've started 3 programs. Those top 3 there, the down payment assistance program. If anybody didn't know, anyone who works for an employer within the city of Sedona, any employer, not the city of, but any employer in the city limits, is eligible for up to $40,000 in down payment assistance. Through the next one, the Rent Local program, we're working to incentivize short-term rental owners to offer their places to long-term renters, so to provide a 1-year lease to someone who works locally. And then we have the deed restriction recording, and this is kind of my favorite because this is something that every one of you could do if you didn't want more short-term rentals. You can restrict your own house from becoming a short-term rental for the next 99 years. The city will enforce that for you over that time. All you have to do is come down to our housing office and say you want to file a deed restriction, and we'll help you through it. It's pretty well simplified at this point. We have a couple of forms. We'll even pay the recording fee for you. The catch is you restrict your own house from becoming a short-term rental, and we know that what's driving our property values right now is the short-term rental potential. So your property may not be worth as much if you filed that deed restriction. So then we have a list of a few other things here that we're working on, and if anybody has any specific questions about these, happy to talk to you over here on this side after the presentation portion tonight. The last one there, the public-private and nonprofit development partnerships. That's what this slide is about. That's one of the things I spend a lot of time working on, talking to various developers and folks who are helping to address the housing shortage. So those top 3 there, 401 Jordan, the Cultural Park, and Sedona, those are city-owned land. We don't have specific plans for them now. I have developers asking about them. There aren't any specific proposals yet for them, but sites that we have identified could potentially have housing on them. The Sunset Loft, which you've probably heard a lot about for a couple of years, still in the planning phases. Like most projects that were conceived a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, they face the same challenges. You get the project all ready to go and it pencils fine, But then building materials went up, and the labor shortage came, and now interest rates went up. So developers, not only sunset laws, but a lot of developers are just going back to the bank, going back to the drawing board, trying to make these projects pencil today. The Goodrow property is actually a private nonprofit developer who has proposed 36 units on a property that he owns. That one is not zoned for multifamily housing, so we need all of you who support affordable housing to come out and say you support a zone change when they ask for it. The West Sedona Hotel, just a project that Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona, who has been a good partner with the city on our down payment assistance program, they are looking into acquiring 10 units that are studios for workforce housing. And they're also working on a project in the village of Oak Creek for transitional housing, which is housing for folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. They can live there for up to 2 years, hence the transitional name. And then a private property owner had proposed some townhome style development near Soldiers Path. Haven't heard from him in a long time. I'm a little worried that that one's maybe going by the wayside for reasons of funding and other challenges. And then 2250 Shelby, it's a property the city recently acquired, and we have partnered with a developer to submit an application to the state for funding. So we'll find out June 1st if they get their funding, and if so, this could potentially be the first low-income affordable housing development in Sedona. So I want to take just a minute to point out that while all of those are apartments or townhome style developments, we recognize the need for affordable home ownership options and other housing styles. But prior to acquiring the cultural park, there were a few sites available which could fit or were zoned for other development styles. That's one of the reasons we're here today, which you'll see in the next part of the presentation tonight. But note that the total of all of these projects is only 162 units proposed. And the 3 parcels of city-owned land at the top might get us 500 more, but that's really optimistic, and it all depends on you. But even if all of these properties get funding and come together, we're still about 1,000 units short of the need identified in the housing studies that I mentioned earlier. So when I was talking about challenges developers face, they're not alone. The city faces a lot of challenges as well. We know affordable housing is a problem across the country, and you saw how it's kind of a bigger problem in Sedona, and part of that is because of these challenges that we have to developing housing. Cynthia kind of started out the night talking about the capacity, so the buildable land, and a little bit about the development policy, like our zoning and building codes. Those things seriously impact our ability to create affordable housing and where we can put it. The economic conditions kind of in the orange-ish circle, I think, the big circle. There's not much we can do about that except recognize that a project that works in a big city might not work here because it's harder to get the labor force and the materials to rural areas. But that's a problem everyone faces, not a lot we can do about it. The things we can do something about are kind of the reason we're here tonight, mostly to look at this development policy and zoning codes and the lack of community support, which I'll touch on a little later. Going on the far, so it would be your left, the state legal barriers. You all probably know by now that the state has sort of tied the city's hands with the short-term rental legislation. We can't stop houses in the city from becoming short-term rental. And I'm not going to belabor that fact, but I want to remind you that this is important. Even though we need to change our zoning codes to allow more diverse housing types, the only thing that allows us to stop stop new construction from becoming short-term rental too is getting a voluntary commitment from a developer. And the only time we really get that voluntary commitment is when the developer wants something in return, frequently rezoning. Sometimes they also want our money. They want an incentive to build affordable housing. But in Arizona, we can't always give developers big subsidies to entice the building of affordable housing the way other states do. Affordable housing takes some creative financing and funding strategies, and the Arizona gift clause sort of adds to that challenge. It effectively says we have to get something of equal value in return when we fund a private person, business, organization, which sounds fiscally responsible and like good policy, right? But the benefit has to be direct, not indirect. So affordable housing for our residents is not enough of a reason for the city to provide a subsidy to a developer. So this forces us to get extra creative and always ask, what else can we get in return besides the benefit of affordable housing for our community? And just the last one that I want to mention real quickly is inclusionary zoning. Sometimes people, especially in a community like this where everyone is from somewhere else, a lot of people say, well, where I'm from, we just require the developers to build some affordable housing when they're building other housing. We can't do that here. It's illegal in Arizona, so that's not an option for us either. And you remember the first item from the previous slide, the Arizona legal challenges and not being able to do anything about short-term rentals. This is a map. I don't know how well y'all can see the dots from out there, but all those little dots represent all the short-term rentals in Sedona. About 1 in every 6 homes. Between the 2010 and 2020 census, we lost about 1,000 people in the community. The average household size in Sedona is 2. So if we have 1,200 short-term rentals, that means about 2,400 residents have been replaced. We know about 1,000 of them moved away from the census, but where are those other 1,400 people living today? And finally, the last one of those little bubbles was the lack of community support, aka NIMBYism. All the fears about what affordable housing is and who it's for really complicate the development process, and in the past have kept several apartments from being built, which is kind of crazy because the average community has about 16% of its housing in apartments. In Sedona, we only have 4%. So I hope you all will think back to Jeannie's comments about the role diverse housing plays in sustaining a community. And remember that if we allow multifamily development by right, developers might build short-term rental condos, not affordable apartments. The zoning change process is a chance to ensure we don't get short-term rentals, not a chance for the community to come out and oppose what may well be in its best interest, housing for our own population. I know that was a lot of information, and I'm finally done sharing all these things that kind of you have to consider before you think about planning for the next 10 years. So up next, some of the members of the Citizens Work Group steering the Community Plan Update are going to share their feelings about the dire need for affordable housing in Sedona and some possible strategies you could support via the community plan. Thank you.
One video, and then Linda's going to roll us out. So thanks for sticking with us. If you need to stand up during this short video, please do.
The Community Plan Update will be a roadmap that drives City Council and staff priorities over the next 10 years. City staff often presents a lot of technical information and data about the need for affordable housing. But here to express it in their own words are the residents involved in the Plan Sedona work group about how affordable housing is necessary for a livable community for all.
I've become aware of the critical
critical shortage of workforce housing in our town. And I am concerned because we were in the hospitality business. We found that providing housing for key employees was a great way to attract and retain good people. Not everyone can do that, but with the advent of short-term rentals, the options for lower and middle rental properties have gone away. And so the city, because they are restricted at the state level, has gone ahead and created some great ideas for how to address the shortage in our town. I hope that you will consider these ideas and support them as I do.
In 2016, I moved here as a retiree, and quickly I heard stories from the locals that Sedona used to be full of families, the schools were full, the parks were full of kids, and I understood the stories, but it's like times changed. So I discounted it. And then I heard the survey that was done in 2020 that a lot of people can't afford to live here. And so a lot of people are commuting from Cottonwood to come do their job in Sedona. And I was like, well, I had to commute for my job. It's a beautiful drive from Cottonwood. What's the problem? I kind of discounted it. But now we have short-term rentals, and they have just destroyed Sedona. All the people who couldn't afford to live here, well, they are gone. They have left the state. Friends of mine have left the state. Many of them moved to Cottonwood. And so we say, okay, they can commute, but they're not going to. Cottonwood is growing. Cottonwood is building an industry. They're going to get those jobs right there. And I see it. It's not just the tourism is being affected. Restaurants are closed more days than they used to be. The CVS pharmacy is only open certain days or certain hours. We're seeing it at the grocery store. It's affecting us as residents. We need to recognize it and step up and look for solutions to bringing affordable housing into Sedona. And I've changed my mind. I am committed to that, and I want everyone else to join us to find that solution.
My wife Karen and I retired here in Sedona 25 years ago. You may have noticed I'm no longer spring chicken, and if lucky, my wife and I will live and age in Sedona another 10 years at least. 10 years ago, we also were involved in the community plan, but not much concerned about the housing issue. Today, like some of us here, we are also faced with a significant downsizing issue. There are any number of reasons. Economic, because of fixed income and inflation. Health-wise, we can no longer care for a large home. Social, because we don't care to engage in large-scale activities anymore. Regardless of the reason, many of us do not want to leave our friends and relationships in Sedona. We need to raise our voices a little and participate in helping restructure the housing stock so that there's something there when we need it. Thanks for helping us all deal with the aging inevitability.
To me, where the lack of diversity of housing in Sedona has the most significant impact is with regard to young families here. We've seen a number of our own personal friends have to move out because they were displaced because of housing decisions made by their owners or landlords, etc. So it's been really hard to see my daughter, who has grown up here, lose friends and classmates, and me lose the parent friends that we've lost. So that's been really difficult. And to see the enrollment in our schools go down because young families just can't afford to stay here. On the flip side, we also know a number of families who are able to stay in Sedona because they're able to rent part of their home or part of their property, either short-term or long-term, to supplement their income. So it's both sides of the coin. But in any event, having diversity of housing really, I think, will help younger people and young families to be able to survive and thrive in Sedona. And I think that helps all of us.
Housing diversity is people diversity. people with different races, different incomes, and different ages. It's what makes a vibrant community. So added to our problems in Sedona with limited land and high costs, we have the legislature that has reached their arm into Sedona and limited what we can do. But we're not helpless. There are many things that we can do because other communities are struggling with this very same issue. In Sedona, in our country, and even globally, there are some excellent ideas out there on how we can make room for our neighbors. And the community plan is trying to address just that. But it will take us to think broadly and to think in 10 years, and to recognize that our old model just won't work. So I hope you will be open and excited about looking at these new possibilities so that we can house our neighbors.
Okay, Linda Martinez.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I wore the same sweater so you recognize me. And I think I said most of what I want to say in the video, so I will be shorter. I will try. First of all, I'd like to thank John Sather, who co-produced this piece of some strategies. And I'd like to begin with, there's so much that you've heard tonight. There's some alarming statistics, what our need is, who we've lost. I want to start with some demographics in our country, and to let you know that, again, we are not alone in this issue. Every city is dealing with it, and particularly resort towns. So we're not the first to be burdened with this. They're ahead of us. So there's some excellent ideas I'd like to share with you tonight, and then you will tell us what you're willing to have in Sedona. I will say before I begin, some of you are going to want to throw eggs at me, and you're going to be horrified at what I propose. Others will say it's about time, and somewhere in the middle is probably where we're going to end up. So please bear with me as I go through some of these. So let's talk about some statistics first. I have one slide with some stats. We are an aging population in our country. And also our adult preferences have changed. There are now 50%, half of our adults are single. 30% of our adults in the country live alone. And a third of our young adults live with their families. Usually because they have no options. The middle class is shrinking, and also family needs are shrinking. So most zoning for housing was really created for the nuclear family, the notion of decades ago, to parents, kids under 21. Now the nuclear family, as defined by that, make up only 20% of our households. And in fact, in families, 27% of kids live with one parent. So it gives you an idea. There's a greater demand for smaller units and more walkability. Yet nationally, 82% of our housing is designed for the family, 2 to 4 or more bedrooms. And only 12% are studios or 1 bedrooms. So as you can see, this is across the country, and cities have been trying to rethink their zoning, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Not just zoning, but some of the ideas. Locally, many of you may know this, but about 84% of our housing is in single-family homes, detached homes, and mobile homes. And as Shannon said, we have a very low percentage of 4% that is multifamily, well below the rate in Arizona and the standard in Arizona. And I want to say also that the Verde Valley, we've lost around the 2,400 jobs, and the ages of 15 to 59. Who are those? Those are our families, our workers. They are the people who carry the community and care for the seniors. We've had, our median age in Sedona is now 61. In 2010, we were 54. Let me give you a perspective about that. Sun City is 72. We're getting close to Sun City with tourists. That doesn't mean we don't have young people who don't want to live here. We do. They can't. So the employment growth is somewhere, Shannon had mentioned 3,800 up to 40, somewhere around that range to 4,200. Most of those jobs will be in hospitality and food service with incomes, and not just that, not just those industries, that's the biggest one. And their incomes will be from low moderate to moderate. And I think Shannon created a very good case as to why we need to imagine housing for them and for seniors who want to downsize, as Ernie pointed out so well. Good job, Ernie. All right. So one of the things, so we're going to talk about what we can consider today. How about that? We can consider height. Oops. There we go. So strategies, let's start back up. So let's look at what we're going to consider in select areas. This is not to mean that these ideas are coming to your neighbor. We're not talking about building these next to you, although there are some pretty exciting ideas that could be done in neighborhoods once we get a control and a cap on short-term rentals. We can consider building heights. We can look at smaller lots or lot splits. A lot of communities are doing this. Flexible design standards, for sure. More diverse housing types, redevelopment and transitional zones along our commercial corridor, and upzoning existing districts. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I know I can move this along. Oh, spacebar. Got it. Got it. So we can reconsider building heights in select area. There are some communities in Arizona, Prescott, Bisbee, downtown Flagstaff. I'm not talking about all of those big apartment complexes, so don't hold me to that. That have exciting, vibrant downtowns or main streets, as well as some communities many communities in Colorado. These are just two. Aspen, Telluride, Breckenridge, Steamboat, they are throughout Colorado. They're very exciting. They add height to buildings. They become mixed use along the main street. And there are some, let me go back. I don't want to give that away yet. There are some benefits. Because if we do that, if we go up, I'm not talking about high-rise buildings, don't get me wrong. But if we do go up a little bit or a moderate amount, we can have less sprawl and more open spaces that we all love. Certainly more walkable, that's come up quite a bit, and that is what people are looking for. We want to get out of our cars. But Sedona, if you walk down our 89A, you're seeing quite a few parking lots, and I'm not sure where we're walking to. It can create a vibrant community character, such as coffee shops and cafes, you know the drill. It's really exciting things, and it's definitely more sustainable. I'll talk more about that later. And we can have clustered businesses. If any of you are here as long as I've been, my husband 37 years or longer, you might recall a map that the design group did when we first incorporated, and they talked about clustered businesses so we can get out of our car and do our businesses there and drive a lot less. All right, so another thing we can consider, this is another strategy many cities are looking at, are smaller lots and lot splits, again, in select areas. And these are some images of what they might look like. So as you see, there's a 3-story here. There's smaller images. So we have in Sedona, we have a lot of space around our homes. We like that, but we cannot create workforce housing. A lot of communities are looking at this. Again, if we can cap short-term rentals, and please think over the next 10 years that on a lot, how would you feel? An ADU, accessory dwelling unit. Santa Clara is certainly encouraging that. So you either can have 2 dwellings on one lot, or you subdivide the lot into 2 lots, and then you can have 2 homes there. We can also consider consider flexible design standards, such as parking. Do we really need so many parking spaces? Now that we've got some shared transportation, it's going to get better as we face the future. There's shared transportation, shared bicycles, shared cars. There's even a community in Tempe that does not, you sign a waiver that you will not have a car. 600 units to be built, about Shannon, yeah. And there's a waiting list. So there are no cars in it. Reducing setbacks and increasing lot coverage, and then we can have some higher density, and we can do this with some infill as well as some new areas like the cultural park and along Main Street. And we can also consider different designs and material that are cohesive with our surroundings. There are some wonderful things out there. So all of this, when we talk about diverse housing options, what we're talking about is the missing middle. You might hear that term. It was coined by an architect, Daniel Paralek. And it's what we talk about. It's between the single-family home that you see on the left and then the very dense housing that you see on the right. And it's everything that's in the middle. And I love this because they are smaller, denser homes, own or rent, small lots, walkable to amenities such as parks, trailheads, public spaces, coffee shops, and transportation. They can be starter homes, granny flats. You'll see what they can be on the next slide. They can be mixed use, pedestrian only, have shared community spaces, community gardens, and spaces for the arts, and gathering spaces, concerts. They're more sustainable by design and scale, and by size and density. The cost tends to be lower, but you can mix them with market rate. So that is the missing middle, and it helps us create housing diversity. And there's what they can be. It's quite a few things. I'll let you take a look at that. Some cities, I know some are taking a very radical approach. I'm not saying that. But there are some cities like Portland that are saying you can no longer build a single-family home on a single-family lot. That it needs to be either a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. Something along that line. And I'm sure you may have read about that. So let's look at what these housing options can look like. On the upper left, that could be a continuing care retirement community. I love on the upper right, I just love this. I love the unique look about it. I can actually see that in Sedona. We talked about cluster cottages, smaller homes that can be built around this cluster with a central gathering space. So you can see duplex, and over here is co-housing. In the center, those are not trees or bushes, that's the community garden. And on this one, we're talking, there are some stacked flats. When you look at cost designs, I want to say one piece about the upper left. As Shannon pointed out so well, their costs are through the roof. Materials and labor costs. And we really don't have a lot of labor. But there are some companies, one is similar, is in New York, where they will build all of the walls according to your plan, or you work according to what they offer. And they can go up, 2 stories, 3, up to 8 stories or so. And they build all of it with the windows and ship it to your community where it is assembled. I love the live-work. We have a lot of XYZ people who live and work from home, and it would be great to have something like that. Bottom left, we could house our vets, and over on the bottom right, prefab homes. There are some great things coming out in prefab. Some are not quite there yet. Like Shannon and I could not get a response from a company called Boxable. Well, they will send you, if we do an ADU, you've heard of it. It comes to your house and it's totally boxed. It's not really a box, it's a rectangle. And it's a box. It unfolds in an hour and you have a house. 325, they're small, 325 square feet, completely finished on the inside and ready for hookups. We have one in Arizona called Zenny Homes. I love Zenny Homes because they have these, it's robotic inside the house. So if you have the smaller version, that's 300 and some square feet and 600 and some square feet. They have walls that move in and out, so when you're sleeping, the wall goes back, but when you're working during the day, the wall comes out. And at nighttime, you press the button, and then from the ceiling, your bed drops down over the sofa, and it's amazing. It's just amazing to me. So there's some exciting things coming out in prefab. All right. So of course the benefits, you've heard a lot of this today. What I like is that we have options. Retired residents can downsize. It can be a starter home for young people. It's more affordable. It's more sustainable. There are shared rides. We become more of a community. It's more vibrant. It's the way things are going, and we can preserve more open space. We can have a sense of community either within the building or within the neighborhood, and definitely walkable. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this project. Now we can also consider redevelopment and transitional zones. And so redevelopment, I'm going to go forward and then come back. So you have the definition, which is when cities or communities' demands and needs have changed, then you can redesign a development, something that just isn't working anymore, and this one will. A transition zone is that zone between the commercial space and neighborhoods. So let's say you had so many stories up near the main street, then as you went down into the neighborhood, then it would become lower and start to blend into the neighborhood. So far, so good? Yeah. Okay. So Mashpee Commons in good old Mashpee, Massachusetts, I love that name, I don't know why, they redeveloped a 1960s shopping mall. And you can take a picture and you see what it looks like. And they turned it into something, this is a very small piece of it that looks like this. And Mashpee, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So what they have now is that they have mixed-use commercial spaces in their downtown area with living spaces on top. They've created public spaces, town greens, residences, galleries, bowling alley, post office, library, outdoor concerts in their small parks. All walkable and bikeable with higher density. So the next phase is going to have 300 residences that are with affordable housing and 12,000 square feet of shops. They did an analysis. How is this working? And they found that this community shows significant environmental, economic, and traffic benefits because it's walkable. So again, if we can consider redevelopment and transition zone, if you take a look at that picture, that could be an example of what it might look like. You've got some living spaces up above, you have commercial down below, and we might get a vibrant community, street. It could be 89A, it could be 179. And again, please don't get hung up on any architectural style. We need to have a style that works for Sedona. So could we consider something like the Bashas Shopping Center? And even though most of our properties are all privately owned, well, there's some incentives. We could talk about that. We can make it enticing for them. It won't work probably in every one, but there's certainly that possibility. Are we open to that idea? Because at Bashas Parkin Center, are there places on 89A? I don't know places in Sedona and Uptown. So upzoning is a tool that we are going to need because changes in upzoning will allow for taller and denser developments. And without upzoning, we have a very limited ability to accommodate our housing demands. So let me tell you about a few benefits of upzoning. It has a lower carbon footprint. There's a smaller size of the units, means that there's a reduced need for heating and cooling. It's more efficient and they use less water and energy on landscaping. It's, again, more walkable, helps reduce traffic. It can increase discretionary spending of the people who live there and improve social equality. So upzoning is a very important tool that we need to consider. So in summary, we go back to what we started with, considering building heights, smaller lots, lot splits, flexible design standards, more diverse housing types, that means smaller units, more walkable, redevelopment, transitional zones, and upzoning existing districts. And I'm leaving you with this, that there's a great concern among so many of our neighbors that Sedona is changing. And some things are out of our control. Shannon mentioned quite a few. There is a long arm of the legislature that really limits in some ways what we can do and what we can't do. We can't take back control of vacation rentals at this point. That's one example. But housing is within our control, but not with our current zoning and land use. The two do not connect. Shannon pointed that out. So there are some great ideas that will foster smaller homes and add more affordable housing neighborhoods. It will benefit us all. There's something there for all of us. So we're asking you to consider housing in the next 10 years, to think broadly, and to have the will to house our neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of our speakers. We know it was a lot of information thrown at you all at once. Just so you're all aware, after tonight, the presentation and the videos that you saw will be available on plansedona.com. So feel free to go back to it if you want to revisit something, or if you want to share it with your neighbors and with your friends and with your family, please feel free to do so. There we go. We have quite a few things that we just want to remind you about before we set you loose to stand up, walk around, get some more food. Like I said, we gave you a lot of information, but now is the important time to get information from you. So like Linda said, these are really innovative ideas. We want to know, how do you feel about them? Where do you think we could put them in Sedona? So we want to hear that. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. We have all of these yellow boards on the side of the room over here. There's a whole bunch of maps over there with different types of land use, some more information that expands on what you heard about during the presentations. We'll also have a lot of city staff hanging out over there ready to answer your questions. So if you have a lot of questions, please go over there. We also have sticky notes and pens over there, so if you have thoughts while you're looking at it, asking questions, please write it down and put it up there. We won't know how you're feeling about it unless you tell us. So please consider that. We also, like Andy mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're going to have our community dialogue tables in the back. So if you would like to talk to your neighbors, please come and do that as well. It'll be similar information, but it'll be more conversational style with a group of people rather than just looking at the maps and doing it quickly. A few other things. We do have a couple of polls on the back of your agenda with the QR code. One of those is the visioning one that you can see over on in the corner of the room. We've got the results projected over there. It'll keep populating as we do it. We have another one on there that we would like you to fill out. And we'll be projecting that up here as well in a few minutes once we get it reset. If you have any issues with the QR code, please visit the visioning station and they can help you figure out how to do that. Interactive stations, it'll be the same stations as before. We have the land use, like I just said, we've got the land use maps over here. We have the resident timeline in the back and our visioning in the corner over here. If you haven't been to the visioning station, this is really important for the community plans. So please make sure that you visit that before you leave for the night. Let's see, last thing, we recognize that we're not giving any time for questions right now with the presenters. That's really just to not have you all sit and listen to people talk for 2 hours. So what we'd like you to do, take those questions name tag for city staff. I think everyone has a yellow name tag. So if you see someone with a yellow name tag, ask them. If they're not the right person, they'll find you the right person. If you have more questions that haven't been answered tonight, maybe at the end of the night you think of another one and it's time to go, you all should have received a comment card, just a little note card when you signed in. If you didn't, we should have them outside at the registration tables. If you could just write your name and email so that city staff can follow up with you in your question or your comment if you are unable to give that feedback beforehand. So we have a lot of ways that you can give us some feedback and give us your thoughts. We want to make sure that we hear from you all because the community is so important to the community thing. So with that, there you go. Come to the community tables if you're interested.